Glue Wednesday. You see, it's my belief that we don't have to get over. We need to find ways to keep it together. And my glue is G.L.U.E. God's love undoes everything, because that's what keeps it together. That life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of each puzzle in your family, social, or business relationships. Yet, no matter what size puzzle piece you think you are, without you, the puzzle is labeled as incomplete. Welcome to Glue Wednesday. Hi, I'm Sporty King. You remember me. Just because it's been a whole year since I broadcast doesn't mean you've forgotten who I am. And since I've been on and off with social media, having all kinds of trials and tribulations, man, that's all good stuff. What a way to start the year. Well, if you were with me last week, you know that I started my year with the subject of suicide. And just as I say, well, someone said, well, God, Sporty, why would you start the year off with a topic of suicide? Very simply, we have to celebrate. At the end of celebration, sometimes there comes a mourning period. But what we can do with the word mourning is take the you out and let it be morning and let it be a brighter day, so that we can know that it's always about the chance and opportunity to restart. And our message is not to the dead. Our message is to the living. So why not talk about suicide and help people become more aware? Because my broadcast and any message that you choose from any messenger that you choose is about stopping the next suicide. And isn't that worth discussing it, slowing down to talk about it? So last week we talked about the first two letters. What I did is I had actually created a suicide prevention awareness program for the Army in Massachusetts back in 2014, 13 or 14. And what I did was I had everybody who came into the session, they got a little business-sized card where it says, I'm an important piece of the puzzle in helping preventing suicide awareness on every day in every life. And each card had a letter up in the upper left-hand corner. They had one of the letters of the word puzzle, P-U-Z-L or E. So what we did was to say that because you know my theme is that we're all a piece of the puzzle. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle. Yet no matter what size puzzle piece you see yourself as, in every business, social, or personal relationship, you are an important piece of the puzzle. And without you, the puzzle is incomplete. So as we got to each letter in the word puzzle, they had to discuss what that letter had to do with the topic of suicide awareness. So in essence, what we did was not make me the authority speaking down to people about here's, giving the orders, here's what you need to know, but sharing with people. If you're ever going to be a speaker, if you get a chance to speak before an audience, you didn't have to become a speaker, but just have this concept in mind. Don't talk to your audience, speak with them. It makes a whole difference in how you'll come across and how you share and how successful your talk will be. So what we did was we spoke together about what they thought about suicide awareness prevention, and then what was I able to do? I had in advance prepared what I thought each letter stood for. So I let them go first. Aren't we more empowered when we find that we've gotten something right? See, you have to do that in your life. Catch people doing something right. We spend so much time trying to catch people doing something wrong. Catch them doing something right. So why not give them the opportunity to first give me the answer, and then I could do just like they do on Family Feud. The survey says, I can say, yeah, here's what the research said, because life is about research and real stuff. And what we have to do is find what we really control is the real stuff, because research may not necessarily be for you. Research is a controlled group of people at a certain day and time when certain things happened to them on that morning and how they responded to the question at hand. Sometimes possibly with no experience. But I bet you that you woke up this morning and the news that you got this morning changed your mood, or set your mood for the day. So recognize that when we wake up, how we wake up, what we wake up to will impact our receptivity or impact what we exude, what type of message we send out, as well as what we receive in. Because why? we are an important piece of the puzzle. And as I can be your piece of the puzzle, now you could be that person sitting next to you's piece, or the person who you go and tell about this broadcast and you'll talk to them about that piece. And don't you see how that's what we're doing is making it work instead of tearing it apart? That's why it's called glue. G.L.U.E. God's love undoes everything. Every trial and tribulation that you have, God has undone that. He's brought it back together for you. Because He's helped you see that whatever you went through was required for you to go through so that you could get the learning that you need so you could impact the people that you need to impact. So let's go back to this suicide thing. And last week, I took the first two letters of puzzle and we talked about those first two letters, the P and the U. But we reversed them. We went with the U and the P first. Why? Because the most important letter is the letter U, and that is understand. We have to help people understand that suicide is a treatable mental illness. And once we can start building upon that, the other letters make even more sense. I'm not going to review what I said last week, but I had to reintroduce the letter U, because once you understand that, you'll see where we're going with the rest of the letters. I did a spoiler alert at the end of last week's broadcast, and I gave you what the Z stood for. But before I continue, let me give a little affirmation source. It's the American Federation of Suicide Prevention.org. AFSP.org is where I'm getting a lot of the statistical information. So if you want to write that down, I'll re-mention that at the end of the broadcast, but I see no reason not to give them two shout-outs because they're doing great work helping people understand that it's a treatable illness. And then also HeyUgly.org, HeyUgly.org, which is a teen website that I'm a partner with, and what we do is we address self-esteem, suicide, and bullying for teenagers. So, you know, you've got some resources and options, throw yours in there and make it more powerful. So I gave the spoiler alert with the Z, and I'm going to open up with the Z. Why would the Z be important? Well, Z is the last letter of the alphabet. And sometimes people who want to take their lives by suicide think that they have no other option. They think that it's the end, it's over. But think about it, when you're teaching a child the alphabet, or even when you state the alphabet, after you go through your ABCs and get to Z, what do you get to do? You get to start over. So let's recognize that Z does not mean it's the end, but it's an opportunity to start over. One of the things I used to do when I was in sales management, I was at the Wall Street Journal, I used to always tell my staff that we were working on plan A, plan B, plan C. And so, you know, whenever something would change, you know, I'd say, oh, well, we're on plan, this is the plan, we're on plan J. And then so they got to the point where they said, well, Sporty, you know, what are you going to do when you run out of letters? I said, well, then we'll number the letters, because we will always have a plan. But that's the key. So, you know, so I would go A to Z, and then I'd go A1, B1. And that's what you've been doing for your entire life, is having different plans from A to Z and then numbering them. But have you been stopping to give yourself credit? That's important when we talk about suicide prevention awareness, because it's how much credit you're willing to give yourself, as well as how much you're willing to accept. And more importantly, who you accept credit from. Because you can get credit from somebody who actually means you wrong, and the advice they give you runs you down a road that you don't need to go down. Whole nother topic there, basically. I think I'll use it in another broadcast. Let's stick with suicide. So meanwhile, another thing about the Z. Z is the number, what? 0. $0. When you have financial hardship, $0 can lead to alcohol and drug abuse, and that can lead to suicide. So the 0 can be dangerous as well. Also, but meanwhile, let's take the 0 and make it a good thing. If we're using military time, 0 is where the military starts to count it from. They say 0, hours. So in other words, we get to start all over again. So constantly find ways to tell yourself and to tell your friends that they can start over. Every day on this side of the ground has got to be a good one. If I wake up the same person I was yesterday, perhaps I never actually went to sleep. So always recognize that you're, even, oh my God, even the World Trade Center, what do they call it? Ground zero. Because they're starting it over. They didn't just say, oh, 9/11 happened, that's the end of the World Trade Center. No, they found a way to make it work for us, to empower people. So it's now ground zero. And then another Z, zeal, Z-E-A-L. In the dictionary, it's eager and ardent pursuit of something. It's enthusiasm, easy for me to say. It's passion. And see, when you've got zeal about something, that's what can help you not even think about taking your life. Zealous. It represents the diversity in the number and types of people or environment who need to work together and be together to keep one another alive. And so that's the I think that's what zealous means. I don't think that's what zealous means. I'm going to look that one up. You need homework anyway. Z-E-A-L-O-U-S. I cracked the people in the studio up. I hope it's cracking you up too. All right? So zealous, but I think zealous actually also means that you're very active about what you're doing. And then my final Z, Zen, Z-E-N, a Japanese Buddhist sect that teaches self-discipline, meditation, and attainment of enlightenment through intuitive insight. It can be a look at your spiritual wellness and how you see change. So how you use that Zen could make a difference in how you see your life. And I thought that was my last Z, but it's not. I've got two more. Zeta. We have sororities. There's a Zeta sorority, but Zeta is also the 6th letter of the Greek alphabet. So you have to recognize that if maybe you're the 6th child, or maybe there's 6 days in a week. See, start to look at the relevance in everything around you. The 6 days of the week, and then on the 7th day you rest. So that's Zeta is the 6th letter in the Greek alphabet, and my really last Z is zigzag. Zigzag. A zigzag is one of a series of short, sharp turns in a course. It's a life's roller coaster. So, you're going to keep zigging and zagging. Life is not going to stop. What is life? L-I-F-E, lessons intended for everyone. And as you get your lessons, you're going to get some good lessons and you're going to get some bad lessons. But the truth is those bad lessons really belong in the good category, because they couldn't be what they had to be unless you got them in particular. Nobody else could get the lesson but you. So we need you to get your lessons. In other words, we need you to live your life. The proverb in the Bible, I changed it. To whom much is given, live. That's the way you have to look at it. It's not to whom much is given, much is required. To whom much is given, live. And you need to live. Ping, didn't that bring us to the next letter? L. Let's look at the L. L is kind of obvious. Obviously, it's going to go right into life. But let's also recognize that L is not obvious because you have to embrace the L. And I'm not going to put life first. I want to make my first L learn. You have to embrace. You have to be willing to learn about how to help someone who has suicidal thoughts. And you have to be willing to learn to recognize the fact that you may have suicidal thoughts and how you can control them. So learning is important. The disorders often associated with suicide are depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. So those are the disorders that the medical, when we're talking about how this is a medical illness, treatable. Schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder are all treatable disorders. So that's important to know. Substance abuse, either on its own or in combination with another mental disorder, can also be a factor when someone decides to take their own life. And we all know that we all say we know that substance abuse is a big illness, but a lot of times we overlook it. It's huge, okay? And if you think I'm repeating some things, I am. Because, there are times where the relevance connects differently for each person. And that's what you want to do. Don't let somebody say to you, well, you said that before, say it again. Say it again for the first time. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we need to hear it again for the first time. Because wisdom being in retrospect, we need to hear how somebody has been through something differently that may connect to what we need so that we can have a clearer path, a clearer vision of what our path is going to be like. But these disorders can cause terrible suffering. They can affect a person's ability to think clearly and to make decisions. See, so the substance abuse connected with already having a mental disorder, the substance abuse can fog the thinking and make you even more careless as well as carefree about what you're doing with your life. They can interfere with you deciding to seek help. They can interfere with you continuing your treatment if you did start getting on your meds. We always hear people say, oh, he's off his meds. We've even heard people say, I'm off my meds. And that's because you've decided that you can overcome something that you need help with. None of us can get through this life alone. We need help. What we want to do is avoid substance abuse, so therefore that's why you have to have the right clinical diagnosis so that they can give you the proper drugs and the proper dosage. And then you want to be honest with your clinician and let them know what the side effects are. You know, those commercials that kill me, side effects are death. You know, come on, you know, you've got to recognize that everything has a side effect. And when you see the side effect negatively affecting and impacting your loved ones and the people around you, you need to speak up. Because that speaking up is also, P.S., by the way, a sign of you getting better. And isn't that the goal? So we want to make sure that we do that, okay? An underlying mental disorder alone is not usually enough. So see, so it's not just the schizophrenia sometimes. It's not just the depression or the bipolar disorder. Sometimes adding those the drugs will accelerate them and make it even worse. Most people who take their own lives experience a combination of deep psychological pain, desperate hopelessness, and challenging life events. It comes in growth. You know, I always say that evil can't beat you alone. That's why my acronym is HOPE, H-O-P-E, having overpowered evil. Evil can't beat you one-on-one. You have to have problems coming in droves. You have to get to where you say, oh, my plate is so full I can't handle anything else. When your plate gets full, decide to get a platter. Recognize that if your plate is full, and if you can't say my plate is too full, and then a half an hour later reassure somebody, so you know God wouldn't give you more than you could handle. Which one is it? You can't have both. So I say believe that God would not give you more than you can handle. And that's why I say when your plate gets full, get a platter. Because the God I believe in and the God you believe in would not give you more than you can handle. If you got 12 on your plate, because I think 12 is the maximum, right? You got 12 disciples, 12 months, 12 days of Christmas. So 12 is pretty much the maximum. Okay, so when thing number 13 comes, instead of saying, oh my God, number 13, what am I going to do? I'm like, whoa, I'm a bad dude. I could do 13. I thought 12 was the maximum. The truth is I really can't do 13. But I know that when my God brings plate number 13, he's taking away 7 and 8. 7, the number for completion. 8, the number for new beginnings. So you got to recognize that your God is always doing a checks and balance for you in your life. What are you doing to check and balance your life? He's giving you that freedom and that courage. So remember, because God has not created a spirit of fear, he's given you the courage. So all you have to do is decide to take that courage. We did a live broadcast before our show today where we talked about what Dr. Martin Luther King really did, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I always want to make sure you add the junior to get the right one. And what he really did is he helped blacks not become afraid to live in the South. Because, see, it was open season on living in the South. No matter what you did, they learned the proper way to speak to people, how to have their heads down, how to walk when they saw, you know, white people on the street, and how to talk to white women, how to talk to white men. They learned all of that, and they would go through it. But at any point, just similar to what I'm talking about, those drug abuse things, at any point, one of those white men, and it was primarily the white men, could just decide, you know what, I feel like hanging somebody today. And he could do it with not a problem. So blacks were actually scared to live in the South. That's what took part of the civil rights movement. That's what took some of the years in it, because you had to get people brave enough to stand up and do what they had to do. When we did the broadcast in advance, Chantal and I talked about how bold Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had to be to stand on the feet of the Capitol and give that speech for the first time. We've heard it several times and in the history books. Imagine the people who were there that day, who had the nerve to go. They were scared to go. But they saw that there was strength in numbers. He didn't have the numbers. He had the number 1. And he had that day scheduled. Nobody could have showed up. He would have still had to show up. So he had to have that belief and trust in his God and his faith. It's the same thing you have to have. It's what's going to make a difference in your suicide awareness. So let's move on. Suicide is the tragic outcome of a serious underlying illness combined with a complicated mix of individual circumstances. So it's what's going on in your life as well, in the interior as well as the exterior. Now, here's what it's not. It's not a sign of moral weakness. It does not reveal a character flaw. It is not a sign of irresponsibility, nor is it a hostile act. It should not be a source of shame. I'll repeat that. It is not a sign of moral weakness. It does not reveal a character flaw. It is not a sign of irresponsibility, nor a hostile act. And it should not be a source of shame. Reading that paragraph over and over, reciting it to yourself as you may be having some thoughts of suicide, will help it sink in. And even if you don't have thoughts of suicide, maybe if you repeat that sentence, if you need to help somebody who's dealing with something, having that in your mind will help you see them differently, because how you see your patient or your friend is how you help them. Sometimes it's funny how people are upset about doctors, oh God, they have no feeling. If the doctor felt sorry for you, they could not help you. If they went to touch your hand or put a splint on it, you jumped, they said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. They can't help you. They have to say, yes, this is going to hurt. When it's time for them to operate you, they don't have time to say, oh man, this is going to hurt them. I hope they're going to feel all right. No, they have to know that this is what God has given me to do. This is a power that God has given me. That's why we choose them. So now why can't we choose our own life? Why can't we choose to recognize that we are not weak when we have those little rough spots in our life? Chantel and I talked about you got to listen to those gospel songs that you hear. We got the words there for you. Don't just sing them and dance. We fall down, but we get up. A saint is just a sinner who fell down. You don't even have to throw that extra part in, but you got to recognize that it's saying everybody has fallen down. Yes. Everybody. And so, and one time I was teaching a life skills class, and somebody said, oh, but Mr. Sporty, you look like you never even fell off a bike. I said, sit your behind down and shut up. Now, that's the PG-55 version that I just gave you. But you can believe that I made it clear to them that I knew what I was doing. And here, how can I teach a life skills class and tell you how important it is to clean up your vocabulary as an important step for you to get from A to B? Forget about C, you got to get A to B. And so, I have made choices in my life. And there are times where I stop and I think, wow, am I cutting these people loose based on my ego? Or is it really God saying, what this person's season is over in your life? And see, that's what you've got to recognize, that somebody's season is over in your life. And it's okay to move on. And then I know sometimes people, family is everything. Bulletin, no, they're not. They may be everything, but they're also a major source of pain. And sometimes you have to get good at cutting your family loose so that you can do a better job of cutting the external people loose. So it's a full package, ladies and gentlemen. And sometimes the package is not in a succinct message that succinct a message as we would want it to be, but the message is succinctly embedded in your spirit. If you are carrying the right message, if you are constantly tuning into the right messengers, it's a domino effect, and it's a patient effect. It's not going to happen just at the drop of that. You are not going to get off this broadcast and say, hey, boo, I was thinking about committing suicide, now I'm fine. That's not going to happen. Oh, I was thinking about talking to my friend about it, now I know how to do it. That's not going to happen. We have to commit to a pace. And when we commit to the right pace, then we will get the success that we need. Unfortunately, in our society, we have chosen to let financial success become the caption instead of the subset. Success is the caption. Financial success is a subset. You do not have to be financially successful to be successful. So stop, running yourself up against somebody else with their success, with their financial success, to try to get you where you need to go. Speaking of where we need to go, what we're going to do is going to continue next week with the letter. What have I got left? Because I'm still on the L. I'm going to pick back up on the L next week, because thanks to you, I had to get a little bit off the track. And you think I'm joking when I say thanks to you, but I'm not. somebody needed me to not just stay focused on notes. You know, it's so important that the notes are there because we have to have the factual information. But the Spirit says, here's what I need right now. And isn't that when you want your medicine? It's when you need it right now. Share this message with someone. And there's no need for us to for me to just sweep, hey, let me talk about suicide for 2 weeks and that's a wrap. I want to talk about it for 3 weeks. Because it needs to settle in, especially at the beginning of the year where a lot of people see, a lot of people, not me, P.S., by the way, I don't use a calendar. I don't use a man-made calendar to create my celebrations. I celebrate all year. I celebrate Christmas, Valentine's Day, my birthday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving. I celebrate them all year because I never know when my day is coming up. And as much as people say that, they don't believe it. So what I'm going to do is close with a poem called I Found Out I'm Dying. It's my signature poem in the first book I wrote, and it's not about the fact that I think I'm going to, you know, keel over right here in the middle of this broadcast, especially since I'm talking about suicide, right? No, but it's about the fact that physically we're all dying from the day we're born. Get over it. One day you're not going to be here. And as we're thinking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this week, isn't that what his the mountaintop speech was about? Not that I have a dream. My eyes have seen the glory. I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. So in other words, he found out he was dying. But did he find out on that day in April? I think not. He found out way before April 4th when he was inside his spirit. Or it was April 4th or was it, August. I'm sorry, it was August when he died. I'm sorry, when you get the facts. April, either he gave the speech, either April he gave the speech and in August he got shot, or he gave the speech in August and in April he got shot. But the key is that Dr. Martin Luther King, when he said, I've seen the mountaintop, I may not get there with you. And that's what we've got to recognize. That's what our legacy is about. We may not get there with our children, but we've got to make sure we set something up so that they can get there. And that's why we've also got to decide that the future is now. And recognize that they are already living the dream. And we have to just keep putting the cushion there for them. So this is I Found Out I'm Dying. You see, actually, I've known it for quite some time now. But for so many others, it's new news. So I'd like to thank you, God, for yesterday, as much as I do for today. And I ask that you, my friends, pause, but not stop, to think about some of the wild things I've survived before this, my greatest challenge. And believe me, death is the only challenge we won't sit and talk about or relive. But we can find joy in it. Joy because there'll be enough kind words at the funeral to create a new dictionary. Kind words that I need now more than ever. You see, kind words keep us alive, physically, mentally, spiritually. I found out I'm dying. And when I woke up this morning, I wept. Then I laughed aloud and started to sing. But remember that I wasn't Chantel Johnson and I couldn't. So I laughed instead. And I whistled a tune as I made my bed. I threw open the window and let out a cheer. Actually, I just smiled so no one could hear. I exercised and dressed and ate after I washed. Then I looked in the mirror and gave myself a wink. Not bad for a body that survived another day. I'm so blessed to get older, is all I could think. I didn't bother reading the obituary because I knew I wasn't there. Instead, I clipped my fingernails and neatly styled my hair. I found out I'm dying, and that I have been since day number 1. So I spend little time regretting my life because I'd rather spend the time having fun. This is Sporty King on G.L.U.E Wednesday. Remember, you are an important piece of the puzzle. Whether you see yourself as a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle, without you, the puzzle is called incomplete. Next week, we'll continue our talk about suicide awareness. Please make sure you check out AFPS, American Federation of, maybe it's APA, whatever I said at the beginning. But it's the American Federation, SP, American Federation of Suicide Prevention.org, or heyugly.org. for teenage. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you next week.